And if I could just ask for you to remain on mute, and that just aids the sound quality for all. Alternatively, if you would like to raise your hand to talk, you can do that by clicking on the participant list on the bottom of your screen. If you would like to alternatively use the chat function, you can see that again on the bottom of your screen. And I would suggest that to get the most from this webinar, if you use the speaker view option for the webinar type style. I hope you will have a very good evening, an engaging session, and now I would like to hand you over to Councillor Marcus Cravis to provide some further context of tonight's webinar.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I'm just flicking through two screens here to see who's on the screen. What I'd like to do, first of all, is just introduce the officers who are on the call. These officers are Somerset West and Taunton. You just heard Craig Stone there, who's communications. Will Collier is there as well. My place on their screen will be different, so if you just wave or something when I mention your name. We got Gordon Dwyer as well. We've also got our Heritage at Risk officer, Joe O'Hara, as well as Lisa Redstone, Nick Bryant, who'll be saying a few words in a minute, and Nikki McLean, last not least, on the call. One thing I would like to do is just so we've had a couple of these now, and sometimes it's not clear who's in business and who's just, so if you can just, if you have a business in Taunton, can you just sort of raise your hand? Just so we can see those who on the call who have got businesses in Taunton. That's perfect. Just a quick, thank you for that. Just a quick rundown of what's going on. There's be a you can have a little introduction from the leader, Frederica Smith, who's Smith Roberts, who's on the call there. You'll also then have a couple of words from Nick Bryant. We then want to have feedback and comments emerging from the email that we sent out, and there'll basically be an open floor discussion after that. Got a brief chat by Shop Happy, and that's the partner we're working with, and obviously Jackie will explain more about that when we get to it. And then we've got another little open floor discussion on the future shaping of our high streets, and that will be hopefully draw us to the end. I'm going to try and keep it as brief as keep to time. Let's hope we can. So if you can keep your comments as brief as possible. But as what I would say is we want to hear from you. But I'll now pass over to Councillor Frederica Smith Roberts, the leader of Somerset West and Taunton Council.
Thank you, Marcus, and good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. So the boxer Mike Tyson said, "Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face." Iron Mike is lucky he never fought this council. The last few months have been the toughest many of us have ever witnessed. Less than a year after we took control of the new authority and having navigated the financial mess left to us by the previous administration, we had already delivered on many of our commitments or started them off. Things such as getting on with the development of Firepool and the Cold Orchard, building more affordable homes and making action on the climate crisis front and centre of our decision making. We've kick-started our commercial investment portfolio and we've been supporting our towns and our coastal communities. Then in March, as the pandemic struck, we had to change our priorities overnight. Now we were offering emergency support to our most vulnerable, getting millions of pounds out of the door to businesses and organising help and helping our community groups while protecting our essential services. As we start to emerge from the worst of this crisis, our commitment to delivering real economic and social change remains. The world is not the same. Our economy has changed and our town centres will be different. What won't change, however, is the fight, the drive and the ambition of this council to deliver on its commitments. So that's what is behind the £500,000 we're putting in to support our town centres across the district as part of our commitment to recovery, investment, jobs and opportunity. The £500,000 investment will help the centres of Taunton, Minehead and Wellington and our smaller district centres through the most challenging times in their history, with a programme of emergency measures designed to aid these vital social and economic hubs. We are now faced with a potentially very serious recession, accelerating the problems so many of our retail and hospitality sectors already face. In the short term, the money we will put towards freshening up of our town centres, keeping them clean and tidy and attractive. It hopefully will help us secure jobs and livelihoods following on from the millions already invested in cash, advice and business support during this COVID-19 crisis. Places are still defined by the town centres. They can drive good public health, community cohesion, great transport and connectivity. For so much of our lifetimes, town centres have been a place of opportunity, and they still can be. The conversation that we're starting now with you, our businesses and our communities, is how and where we invest in the longer term and how they should look and the role they can play in our future. So thank you, and I welcome your ideas and your suggestions.
Thank you, Federica. I think the key word there is opportunity and community cohesion. I think very valid points, and they've come out a lot in some of the surveys that we've had, which we'll discuss later. And I'm going to pass you on to Nick Bryant. I can't see Nick, but I'm going to pass over to you now.
Thank you, Councillor Covis. So yeah, my name is Nick Bryant. I'm the Assistant Director with responsibility for economic development, amongst other things. And just by way of introducing myself, I thought I'd just talk a little bit about some of the work that the Council's been doing in response to the COVID crisis. So, and I'll try in so doing not to repeat anything that Councillor Smith-Roberts has said. So first things first, the team's been instrumental in ensuring the paying out of over £40 million in grant to eligible small businesses and retail, hospitality and leisure sectors. We've also provided £28.1 million in discounts for retail, leisure and hospitality business rates, holidays. We've allocated resources to provide food parcels to vulnerable members of the community. We've been part of a partnership COVID helpline within our district. We've also had to do things like planning in the event of excess deaths and how the council might need to respond to that. Many of you will know that the council set up provision for the homeless at Cannons Grove to put in place support facilities for those people to stay well and stay off the streets during this this period. And of course, Lisa and the rest of the team that are here on this call today, this evening, have been instrumental in supporting the reopening of the high street safely under the terms of the government's COVID guidance. I think the other thing for me to say is that in terms of this particular part of the organisation, once it became apparent that COVID was going to have a really sort of profound long-term impact on the way that we do things, the councils responded very, very quickly to that, and there's a number of ways that we've done that. So the first one is that we've put a lot of thinking and a lot of resource into recovery and a plan for growth for Somerset's economy. And we've already started to lobby government, if you like, around some of the package of support and investment that we think is going to be needed to kickstart the economy here in the district and in Taunton specifically, as well as the county town. In order to directly support recovery, we've looked to accelerate our own regeneration plans because, of course, they can play a really important key role in helping to bring jobs in construction and development, as well, of course, as to the physical regeneration of our area. We've also been applying and made available significant additional resource to our economic development service to make sure that we can look to support businesses and individuals through this difficult time, whether that be businesses themselves or indeed those individuals that might be unfortunate enough to find themselves at risk of or being made redundant. And of course, the last bit really is the bit that we're here for tonight, really, which is about how we want to work with businesses in kind of helping to shape our plans for the future and the good ideas that I'm sure will come out tonight and how you can support us. We can support one another in that recovery piece. So I think that's probably enough for me to say at this point. So I'll pass back to Marcus to sort of introduce the remainder of the session.
Thank you, Nick. I mean, what I would like, actually, I haven't had a chance because I haven't shared any of these so far, and I would just like to publicly thank the whole of the economic development team and the team that also was responsible for making sure the business grants were distributed in the speedy way that they were. I think the whole team, and well, the whole, not just the ECDev team and the other team, but the whole council has, when COVID struck, there was a lot of stepping up to the plate was done. And I think I'd just like to publicly thank the ECDev team in particular for all the hard work that's gone on. One of the things that we've been doing, a survey went out, and a survey went out and 48 people responded to the survey, which is a good response. It's not maybe the best response, but it gives you a good idea of some of the things that people are talking about. What I want to do is just read through some of those, because it could be good open points for discussions. As I said, we want to hear from you. We don't want it to be about us talking to you and things like that. We want to hear your points of view. So what if I can just read a few of those out. We've got, out of the people who responded, 17 out of 48 mentioned that they would like the pedestrianisation of the high street and town centres. You've got 2 out of 48 mentioned supporting independence in the coal orchard. You've got people highlighted the need for good pavement cafe culture. That's quite apt actually, because on some of the training sessions you get from how to regenerate the high street, they talk about Stockton-on-Tees, they talk about Stockport, they talk about another town they talk about a street in York, just the other side of the wall in York, and how they've helped regenerate local businesses by putting on events and trying to create that sort of culture, and also markets, which is one of the things that people mentioned, but not really high number of people mentioned markets being wanted, more markets. Obviously, you got displeasure in business rates. Rest assured, I'm fully behind you on the fact that the whole business rate system, but I don't want to go into any of my own personal and political views there. Lots of people said parking kept free, parking concessions for retail staff, more high street events, that was talked about. Again, cafe culture, pavement enlargement rather than pedestrianisation. Business support in filling up vacant retail space in the town centres. Homelessness management and begging management was also in there. I think there was also a mention of specific places for buskers as well. An online promotional presence was mentioned, and also the relationship management with commercial landlords and council. Concerns about rental cost levels for shops and town centres. Covered outdoor seating areas in the town, green spaces, vibrant diverse events such as food festival, arts, music, etc. Street entertainment, towns cleaned and maintained better. And then moving on, how things could be shaped, because obviously there's several parts to this. Pedestrianisation comes up again, parking comes up again. Customer focused shopping and visitor experience. That's I think quite a wide ranging comment there. Again, vibrant events, fill town centres, the evening economy, cafes opening later, shops opening later, increasing shopping hours, etc. I'm trying not to repeat any that have come up before. More help for independent traders, mentioned market on, yep. And I think that is probably much about it. I don't think some of the others were more specific. Free bus service to hospitals from town centre, etc. So as you can see, they're just a summary of some of the comments. There was obviously those comments, some of them had a lot of greater detail in, and that's what I'd like to sort of throw open now to you to ask us. Now, I think Craig mentioned earlier, if you go onto the bottom of the screen, click on participants, and then click on the raise hand button. If you want to speak, please raise your hand that way. If you can't find that, wave it frantically, and hopefully Craig, myself, or somebody else will spot you. So on that note, I'd like to officially throw it open to the floor for your comments. Who's going to be first? Okay.
Well,
someone's
got to go first. So this is Kit.
Thank you, Kit.
If you'll spare me a second or two to, this is a very important issue. We need to liven up the centre of our town. This is what Federica's £500,000 is all about, and how we can best use that £500,000. I know it's not all for Taunton, but we're talking about Taunton this evening, so let's stick to Taunton. And we have a situation in the centre of this town now that is pretty dismal, and we're talking about the county town of Somerset. And as we look at the county town of Somerset today, it isn't looking terribly bright. Next is closed, Accessorize is closed, Monsoon is closed, Debenhams is very likely to close. The main drag down North Street is full of pound shops, bargain basement shops, charity shops, and so on. This is not a good advertisement for the county town of Somerset. And what I think we can all agree on is that we want to drive visitors to the centre of our town to use the many good facilities that we have to offer here, but we've got to do something about it. And I think you want to do something about it pretty quickly. So there are shorter term solutions. Tidying up the streets and so on is immediate. But what I would like to suggest in the use of this £500,000 is that you engage or find someone that you might call an events manager who can really liven up this town centre in all sorts of ways. I mean, what we really need to see is a better public realm, and you can do something with that by having, for example, outside theatre events, temporary art events down the centre of the town. Fill it with art, fill it with fun, fill it with theatre, fill it with events of all kinds. I point to one thing last Christmas, and I thought this was brilliant. You put a really good ice skating centre up around the Christmas holiday period. That was, I think, I don't know the facts, but it looked to me next door at the Castle Hotel that this was a runaway success. Fine. If you take that example, that's the sort of thing we want to do. And I would inevitably expect that from me, arts and culture right at the heart of that, because arts and culture can regenerate a town. And I'm talking about the immediate term now. So I'm saying you can do this. You really can do this, because what you want to do is to drive visitors into the town, give them something to see, to look at, to enjoy, to participate in, by really doing something quite imaginative and radical and creative, by turning the centre of this town into a destination that is great for culture and arts of all kinds, to please all people. That is what I would really suggest for the shorter term. For the longer term, there's much more you can do. And I'm pleased to see Joanne O'Hara here, the distinguished conservation officer, I would say, who is having something done to the collar factory here in Taunton. I don't know how many of you know the collar factory. It's a grade 2 listed building. It's an absolutely outstanding building that is falling to pieces. The owner of the building, a man called Gavin Eddy, is charged with restoring it. He's spending, I think, about a couple of £100,000 to restore it, to make it just not to restore it, to make it watertight and secure, which at the moment it is not. That building right next to Firepool, which is in the process of being renovated, regenerated, by the cricket ground, would make the most fantastic facility for arts and crafts. It's something this country could really do with. It could become a centre for the revival of artistic skills. And by artistic skills, I mean anything from cooking to leather work, to embroidery, to metal work, to thatching, to cider making, to anything you want. There is very little of that around the country. That building, because of its space and its fantastic huge windows, wide spaces, tall ceilings, would make a fantastic place, a fantastic arts centre with cafes and so on the bottom floor. That's just one example. There are other things that need to be sorted out. The pumping station needs to be sorted out. But these are, of course, more for the longer term. And I suspect you want to keep the time frame fairly tight here. But that is what I'm suggesting. Taunton, as you know, really has been through a very rough time, I think, for over the last decade and a half, 2 decades. I don't want to say anything about the previous administration, but let me just say that the present administration, it strikes me, is doing a fantastic job to get this town on its feet, to make it a destination, which it's lost. It was a market town, it is no longer a market town. It needs a new identity, it needs a sense of place, it needs an injection of civic pride, and these are some of the ways we can do that. By making arts and culture a focal point for visitors to this town. It's been done before, it's been done in Gateshead, notably in Gateshead, a post-industrial slum that has turned the corner completely and has become a major destination for the arts in the north of England. There are other examples nearer to home. I would point to Frome. Frome is a remarkable place that has attracted people to go there for its cultural events and its arts there. St Ives with the Tate Gallery is another example. Margate, a rundown seaside town in Kent, has been revived by the introduction of the Turner Contemporary Art Gallery. There are lots of other examples. So what I'm suggesting here is not in any way particularly original, but it works, it works. And for Taunton to move forward and for Taunton to regain its stature, and it needs to be regained, I would suggest that this is the way you would go. And finally, I would say my recommendation to the council would be to recruit or appoint a events manager, someone with something of an impresario kind of attitude to things, to really liven up this town and attract people to it. It would be a good way of spending some of that 500,000, I would say.
Thank you, Kit. I think you've got your point across, and I was frantically taking notes. I think other people were frantically taking notes. I think, as you say, it's £500,000. It's not all going to be for Taunton. It's got to be spread along around the new larger district, and but it is what we can do in the short term and to make a difference and make a start. And I think there's somebody else with a hand up I saw there. I've actually want to bring in Mike Ginger first, and then I'm going to go to the people who've raised their hands in the hands button. So Mike Ginger first, if you want to unmute yourself.
Thanks, Marcus. I just wanted to stress the importance of people walking and cycling into the town centre from a business point of view. They do spend, a surprising amount of money. I know that from my own experience because I always walk or cycle into town. I do spend quite a lot of money there. And there are a couple of specific things in that context I wanted to suggest in the context of the fund that you've got at the moment. One is to do with A-boards, and I understand why people put A-boards out, but they do cause issues for people with mobility problems, visual impairments, and pedestrians generally. And I was very struck by what I saw in Langport, where banners were put out all the way along the high street, sort of showcasing the various businesses along the high street. And I thought this sort of thing that could work quite well in Taunton. I mean, looking at, say, St James Place, for example, where there are a lot of streets, I should say, where there are a lot of A-boards, having banners, colourful banners, could be quite attractive, and it would add some animation to the streets as well. And the second specific point is to do with cycle parking. I know you've talked about car parking, but there are sort of areas in the town where there's quite a heavy demand, particularly around the market house, and often there aren't any cycle parking spaces and people have to sort of improvise. So anyway, I just wanted to make those two very specific suggestions in the context of the fund. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Mike. If you can just mute yourself again now, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to go in order of who I've got raised hands here. And what I would say is, I mean, what can we do straight away to help Taunton, I would say, and and what do you as businesses need in order to adapt really to adapt and recover and even flourish post-COVID? Joanne O'Hara, can I go to you next, please?
Hi there. Thank you very much, Kit, for raising the issue of historic buildings. And I know that the focus of this evening's meeting is to talk about the immediate recovery and what we can as a council can do over the next 12 months, but I'm kind of listening in to sort of see what might happen in the longer term. We should be phenomenally proud of the heritage assets we have in the town, and I am obviously continuing to look into the future and see what we can do to resolve some of the longer term problems. So if you are able to feedback some of those issues as well alongside the economic development, we'll obviously take them on board. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And Bethan, you're I can't see you. You're not on my. Oh, you're there. There you go. You got your hand up next. So fire away. What I would say, I mean, you're from Taunton Chamber of Trade, aren't you? So
yeah, I'm the membership and events manager for the Taunton Chamber of Commerce. But actually, the views I'm sharing this evening are my own. That's normally the little disclaimer at the bottom, isn't it, of people's personal comments. I was just going to say that we've been living as a family in Taunton now for 6 years. I have a 10-year-old, and what's significant for me is the fact that we pop in to town to do things. And for what I'd really love to see is the ability for me and my family to say, do you know what, let's go into Taunton for the day. And I think there needs to be some really good joined up thinking between, some of the community and arts, things that, sort of Kit was talking about, and sort of some of the markets on Castle Green, but also linking to that sort of early evening, nighttime economy, so that I could quite easily come into town. Perhaps if I'm coming in all day, it's worthwhile me coming in on the park and ride, or it's worth me coming in on the bus rather than just popping in. And it means I can, I'm spending money in a cafe when we arrive. I'm spending some money in the shops. I'm doing an art or a craft or some sort of leisure activity with my family. And then maybe we've got hungry, and then we're having a meal then before we come home again. And before I know it, I've spent a day trip's worth of money actually in my local economy. So for me, I think it's really important to have all of these different activities on offer. Really good shopping, both national stores and independent retail, to have arts and craft and markets and entertainment facilities as well, and to have some really great restaurants and cafes and bars. But there needs to be that joined up thinking between all of them, so that they overlap into actually a total offering, so that people, rather than saying, right, let's go up to Bristol for the day, or let's go down to Exeter for the day, people are as equally as engaged about coming in and spending the day in Taunton. So joined up thinking was my thought.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's well, they're all valid points, but that again, valid point, and that early evening economy especially. Moving on, then I have Oliver Santini, who is next. I can't see you. Are you there? I see you've got your logo up. Are you there, Oliver?
I'm here. Hi, thank you. Mr. Chapman has become my new favourite person. He's completely spot on with his general analysis and desires, I think, as well as Bethan, the joined up thinking, the varied shopping and activity and events driven approach is the only way we can improve Taunton. I know that I'm a newly adopted member of Taunton, so I appreciate that I haven't gone through maybe the troubles and strife that some of you have. But the vast potential of the area Somerset in general, but Taunton in particular is one of the reasons why we settled here. Okay, so if I get my thoughts in order, you've got an innovation centre turning up. Is that what you call Coal Orchard? Is that the same thing? If it is, then that has the potential to be a huge draw. But this is a future project. And what you currently have is a wonderfully wide high street that branches off into a wonderful local shopping area down near where I am in Middle Street. And then up towards the top where you've got the estate agents, and then you've got East Reach, which is now closed, which is fantastic closed. All of these areas being pedestrianised or widening of the paths as a happy medium is a fantastic idea. What you're lacking is a means of communication, and the gentleman, I didn't catch his name, who talked about the banners on the side is barking up the right tree, I think, too. But don't go banners, because that's messy, and you have to keep reprinting your banners, and it doesn't generate any income for the local council. Everybody seems to be crying about parking. I don't see why you would. I mean, the parking's cheap. I'm from London. You're privileged. The parking, I don't think, is going to go away. Otherwise, how are the council going to make, money? And I don't think that the business rates are really going to reduce with this administration or the overall government anyway. So I think those two arguments are just a waste of energy. Let's just find other ways of generating income for the local council so that we can then pump that money into improving of the high street, improving of events and cultural events in particular, things that make Taunton, be it food. Markets are done very well in the more rural areas. Taunton itself is much more vibrant, much more of a Bristol little brother, if you want, or sister or other, to be PC. So you need a product or a system that is going to encompass everything and bring in people. We have just done an agreement with Taunton FC, the Peacocks, where we are going to be, if the stars align and we're able to do what we've been discussing with the council, non-disclosure, Taunton Taunton FC are going to have a presence on the high street during match days. They are going to be putting up an advertising screen for local businesses outside of their ground now, which is just going to be along that street. It's going to be visible. It's going to be 8 foot up in the air. No real risk to anybody as long as planning is passed, which we've applied for. These are the innovative ways that we can improve the area and bring it in as a tech hub, but also as a cultural hub to the area with the innovation centre and the walkway between the station and the town centre, and the improvement of that area and the digitisation, so the future proofing of that area. I hope people caught that. I tried to speak as quickly as possible, but that was my point, to sort of encompass things with the other guys, including Mr. Chapman and Bethan that had just spoken.
Thank you, Oliver, and thank you for I think there's enough there for. I'd love to see if anybody else has got any comments on that. I do have next person. I have Eddie Gaines. Hello, Eddie.
Hello there. I fully support what Kit has said, because I live in Wiveliscombe, and art and culture has been of a great benefit to where I live in Wiveliscombe, and quite a lot of people who have moved here are very active in art, producing their own artwork, etc. And of course we have our 10 parishes festival in September, although this year it is postponed for obvious reasons. Now, I did speak with Kit probably about 9 months ago with an idea, because I'm a great fan of the High Line in Manhattan, and this is where a redundant railway line was given over to the community, and it's now very much a visitor attraction, or was, and I think that that sort of model could be put into the high street of Taunton. Now you're going to say, well, we haven't got a railway. Well, you've got lots of shops, and most shops operate on the ground floor. If you go up one floor, you see their stock rooms, you see blackened windows, you see whatever, you know, they've got there. Now, why not using an events manager to pull those shopkeepers together and link them to artists and actually put art in those windows? And then thereby you've got an arts trail, which can be changing every month. You could have a theme. You could have, you know, every 2 months, say, change the theme. And that would obviously give space for artists to put their work, that they may want to sell that work, and then a commission could go to the shopkeeper or whatever. And I'm sure that would create a very unique selling point for Taunton. And actually people would then come to Taunton to look at the artwork and then go into the shops and cafes and whatever. And I think one of the most successful walking exhibitions was the Dragon Trail, for example, that the Mayor of Taunton, Dave Durden, put on. And people, you know, got their maps and they went around and they ticked them all off, and at the end of that Dragon Trail, a lot of those dragons were sold off for charity, and it created a charitable fund, which is still supporting the people of Somerset. So I think that is the sort of thing that is very easy to put in place. It just needs someone to talk to the shop owners, and of course there are quite a few shops now that are actually closed, and I remember when you had the World Cup, most of those shops suddenly had murals or whatever, so that the actual town centre did not look derelict. So I think something like the High Line model put into Taunton town centre would actually generate a lot more interest in Taunton as a place to go and look at good art and bad art, of course.
It's all in the eye of the beholder, Eddie.
All in the eye, yes, yeah. You never know, you might get the odd Banksy.
Yeah, we could do with a few. Okay, I've now got 4 speakers. Lined up, I've got AK, Paul Smith, I can pronounce that right, but Bajrat Haran, Vicky Dawson. So we're going to go with AK. I don't know what AK stands for, but I'm sure you'll tell us.
Okay. I don't know what AK stands for. I would like to know how our AK has come in here. My name is Prem. I own Mango Tree, the vegan restaurant in Lower Middle Street. I have come to understand there's quite amount of vegan people, and then I had invested last December, which really started to kick off in March, when unfortunately I had to close down, and then I have opened up again. The issue I have is because of the new regulations, and unfortunately I do not have an open space. I have noticed a lot of people who even come for takeaways would not want to come into the restaurant. They just stay outside, have their smoothies outside, and go away. Through my business, all the suppliers are local, and also I support Arc Center in Lindley House throughout by donating foods, whichever is remaining food for the day. But I don't know if I can continue doing this, because at the moment how we are is due to the unavailability of space outside, I do not know how I am going to prolong this business. So what I would ask is if someone could consider the outside space for me to use it in the evenings at least, I understand this. The road down on the St. James is already shut down. It's pedestrianized. It's just that part of Lower Middle Street. If I can be somehow made to use, then I can prolong my business. And that is one of the things how council can help me. And I would really ask to consider this, please.
Okay, thank you. And as I say, I've written it down. I'm sure others have as well. And I now have Paul Smith. Paul had quite a bit to say about Minehead being from Minehead, but I say I first met you, Paul, in Taunton. So fire away.
Yeah, lovely to join you this evening. Yeah, it's been interesting to hear everyone. A lot of the things I agree with, particularly in the arts. I think arts is always a quick win. It gets people, it's inclusive, it crosses boundaries. I think the situation with some of the other chats we've been having about pop-up shops is difficult due to landlords and difficulties there. The high streets, I've got shops closed all over the country. That's a problem that's not unique to Taunton. It's been great having it pedestrianised. I know that the pedestrianisation is quite obviously controversial. I think it's been quite good. I think really it's having a space, where a meeting place. I just want to share this with you because I've just saved it from our magazine. Yeah, this is Taunton like years ago, 1891 or something. And it's essentially the county town of Somerset, and there's lots going on, there's lots of people, there's lots of spaces for people to meet. And this is what I think we need as a quick win, is more attractive places for people to meet, to keep them to stay, to spend more money in our towns and our economy. And also the heritage side. I know a few of you have mentioned in the comments. I think it's being proud of the ownership and the brand of Taunton, what Taunton stands for, our history, and how we outwardly we promote that, which the arts can do very well. If we can do something to showcase where we've been and where we're going in the future, I think for me that's a really good way. I know in the arts at the Kick in Paul Street, I know the guys there have got an event, something launching on the 1st of August, which showcases the history of Taunton. And they've got digital signs as well. I know, because we put some money towards helping them out. So I think a quick win, this is what this is about promoting what we've got as a town, our history, our heritage, showcasing the arts, that people inwardly can promote it. And I think some ways to keep people in town for longer, more social meeting places to keep people there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. I've got two more speakers before, and I'm going to take them before I move on to the next item. And apologies if I pronounce it wrong. Berjat Huran, can you unmute yourself?
Hi. Yeah, thank you for this. It's very helpful to hear people's opinion about Taunton, which I think I agree with everybody else who's spoken about how much potential I always see in Taunton. We live out of Taunton. We came to Taunton some years ago from London, and whenever we go to Taunton, I see the potential this town has. I think lots of people talked about cultural things. I think the first thing for me is the visual things, how things visually look in Taunton itself. We're obviously competing maybe with towns like Exeter, Bristol, Bath, maybe in some ways, and the street as well. I hear lots of people, we've gone shopping to the street or to Bristol or to Exeter for those. So we need to find a unique selling point for Taunton. We don't compete necessarily with those people in the things they're established in. So we try to create something for Taunton which could be quite unique and appeal to people, and that they can't necessarily find those things in other towns, close by towns. For me, for example, the areas around the river could be done a lot better. If you go to Bath and see what they've done around the rivers there, and here in Taunton, is quite a big contrast. And also, there is a lot of talk at the moment about the centralization of the government policies about moving things out, and also the price of properties in London. People may want to come to Taunton and live in Taunton. People have more money. Somebody talked about people having money to, obviously, the more business we create in Taunton, the more money the council gets from various things, and the businesses become richer. So I think maybe improve the rail maybe a bit to London. So those people who do want to move out of London can choose Taunton as an area to move into. And often there are people with money. So with culture, I think it's great, but we need to do something which is very inclusive. Young, somebody talked about 10-year-old child they have, from young children maybe to adults and to retired people. So it covers a wide range of people, the residents. It basically caters for all the residents of Kingston rather than the ones who are just interested in art, maybe sports things, people who are really sporty, maybe, you know, other activities as well. So I agree that Taunton is has got massive potential, but a lot of things needs to be think about. We need to think about why these businesses are closing and why no one comes to Taunton. So we don't want to create other things which that we may end up having the same problem, or that, for example, is not utilized. We got the theater, how often that theater is used. So that's my comment really. I don't want to take any more time, but this is great.
Thank you. And yeah, and I too have heard the, speaking to estate agents, have heard that maybe those London folk are starting to look into the West Country a little bit more as they're getting more used to working from home or being allowed to work from home. I now have Vicky Dawson. I can't see you, Vicky. You must be on my other screen.
Could I just mention something as a positive thing, finish with a positive note? We have a holiday Blackdown Hills, and it was quiet, nobody here. Suddenly from 4th of July, we are fully booked, 2 months, solidly booked,
Yeah,
which is, I think, is really positive. Thank you.
Speaking to people in Exmoor as well, I'm hearing that, you know, those traditional 6 weeks are booked fully, and people are booking September as well already. So it is good news. Vicky Dawson.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I think the purpose of this meeting is obviously to think short term at the moment, to get up and go, but we don't want to waste money. We want to have the longer term in mind as well. I think an awful lot of good points have been made. Yes, culture is and the arts are renowned for rejuvenating, revitalizing places, but I'm sure you've all been reading your newspapers, the dire situation of the arts at the moment, and for as long as you know the virus is around, it's a real challenge. Having said that, challenges are there to overcome. I would say an arts officer rather than an events officer, but there we go. I think, as Berjat was saying, support what you've got. You've got a fantastic theatre. You've got lots of shops that are empty, and I appreciate what I think it was you were saying, Paul, that landlords and the rest of it, but surely it's in landlords' interest to have an environment in which they can let their shops in a you know, in a proper commercial way of doing that. So I think trying to tackle that knotty problem of the short-term use of premises, whether it's for arts events, exhibitions by existing artists or whatever. I don't know what is happening about Somerset Arts Week this year, whether they're going ahead and in what format, but it would be worth talking to them, because obviously they've got all their fingers on the pulse of local artists. I think premises for startups is really important. So again, that's subsidized rents or whatever. We've got to have an awful lot of people out of work, creative people, and hopefully people relocating who've had enough of big city life. So I think really that economic development of the startup, and it's fantastic to hear that the collar factory is on people's radar again, because every time I pass it, I think that is somewhere for startups. If you think of the old paintworks in Bristol or things like that, it just, you know, cries out for it. Ultimately, on the longer term, I don't think we need to lose sight of that we need a Taunton Town Council to actually take Taunton forward, to actually concentrate on Taunton. It's great that the new authority, the district council, is convening meetings like this, but they've got a huge area, a huge portfolio, and Taunton being unparished, it's just ridiculous. Thank you.
Can I chip in here? Chairman, Marcus, can I chip in?
Yeah, if you can be brief, Kit, because I do want to try and keep the time slightly.
I would like
Jackie coming up next.
Endorse 100% many of the comments that Vicky Dawson has just made. I agree with her. I think arts officer is a far better title than events officer. Absolutely right. Premises for startups is a very, very good, strong point. And yes, the collar factory would be ideal. And I absolutely endorse the point about a Taunton Town Council.
Okay, thank you, Kit. As it happens, I've been speaking. Well, I'm a big fan of box parks as good for startup businesses, and that's about obviously that's something that can be done quickly rather than not necessarily involve a long-term investment. Although I can see your point. But anyway, I'd like to move on to Jackie Mulligan now from Shop Happy. If you Google Shop Happy, and I say Shop Happy because initially I did Google Shop Happy and couldn't find anything. So, but no, if you Google Shop Happy, it's one of the things that as a team we looked at early on in the COVID crisis on the issue of how people were going to get the online presence of many independent businesses that actually wasn't there. And I think Craig did some work on researching and seeing what the online presence of local businesses was and how those, what state they're in to actually react to suddenly switching to an online model very quickly. And we then ended up chatting to Jackie, and I'm now going to pass you over to Jackie. We'll explain it all a lot better than I will, but for those, and I'll let Jackie.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for letting me come to this meeting. And as always, in every place we speak to, everybody has an emotional connection to place. Everyone's got an opinion on where they live. Everybody cares deeply about their town, whether it's they've bought their house and setting up their family, as we heard from Beth earlier, whether it's Kit and his passion for arts and culture. We all have an emotional connection to place. So why the hell are our high streets dying? Is what I wanted to ask myself, because I live in Saltaire. I'm actually in London. I moved to Saltaire, lovely little town with a very strong arts heritage side, beautiful little shops, fantastic market towns across Yorkshire. And our high streets across the UK have been dying. 55% of people said just before COVID they preferred to shop local, yet our high streets are dying. During COVID, we have seen astronomic decline of high streets, particularly in the non-food area, but we've also seen a sudden realisation of the importance of local shops and local high streets and how important those communities are at a time of need. So I think we're sitting on an amazing opportunity. So I started Shop Happy 4 years ago because I could see what was happening in my own local community, and I wanted to create a platform that would make it easy for people like me, busy people, with families, with work, commuting, to still support local. I used Amazon, Ocado, like most people on this call will, however much you love your local high street, because it was convenient. But I got really angry that there wasn't a choice. Just because I was busy, I couldn't get to support local. So I wanted to create a platform that would help level the playing field. And I had a dream. What if we could level the playing field? What if we could give the power of a superstore to a small shop? What if we could give the power of a superstore to a place? And why the aggregators win is because they make it easy. But what I wanted to do was create an aggregator platform that would disaggregate the economy, that would put the money back into local shops, local businesses, local arts, local makers. So Shop Happy has grown. It's grown exponentially during COVID because basically people have needed to go online and people have still wanted to maintain that relationship with their local businesses. 61% of people are still nervous about going into local high streets. It's great that tourists are coming back to Taunton. I'm going away myself in a couple of weeks. But I don't feel that comfortable, if I'm honest, about going into physical businesses. And that's because I have a husband who is shielding. So we are more nervous than we've been before. So prior to COVID, we were already not going to the high street as much as we wanted to. And then now post-COVID, or whatever this is, in this weird non-restrictions, restrictions kind of world we're living in, there's an increased fear. So we have to make it as easy as possible for people to support local and support the places they love. We have to make it easy for people to spend money where their heart is and where their art is. Because all of this, what I've just heard about, is massive interest in arts and culture. So I'll just give you one tiny thing. Saltaire, we have an arts event. We have Shop Happy that's live with its greengrocers, bakers, its butchers, its food, its gift shops, its bookshops, whatever, it's on there. But we have an amazing arts trail. And this year it couldn't happen because of COVID. So all we did was make the event virtual. We brought 65 artists onto the platform. We enabled them to showcase their work. We created an arts trail that was digital. 22,000 new users came to Saltaire during that arts festival that was digital. And 2/3 of the artists made sales. So we helped artists at a time of need, because it is catastrophic what is happening to arts and culture in this country right now. So what we try to do is bring all of a place together digitally. And you know what I've discovered? We previously used to do it that you'd shop local, so you could buy from your local baker, your local greengrocer, you could buy some gifts, you go and click in and collect after the shops are closed. Convenience with a local conscience was what we called it. We started delivery during COVID, and what we discovered is that it isn't just the people that are shielding that aren't coming to high streets. It's also people that can't physically get to high streets. So if you're an inclusive community, you need to reach out to people that really can't come into the high street for all sorts of mobility, mental health, as well as busy reasons. So this platform is basically a digital shop window. We are not trying to make people into online shoppers. What we're trying to do is show people how great where they live is. And yes, people will always have something negative to say about their own communities and the town and everything, but actually you're all seeing beauty in it. So we just have to show the green shoots. We've had a decade of doom and gloom that's told us that the high streets have nothing to offer. So what Shop Happy does is also try to find the story. So it's a campaign that helps people join the dots. Where you shop matters. We partnered with Visa because where you shop matters. And what we want to do is put people to understand that their local economy and their local community are completely entwined. You know, the vegan restaurant, the Mango Tree guy, hello, you know, he's got a personal stake in his community. He's not like Debenhams closing. Debenhams is a tragedy when it closes because you lose jobs, but people are betting their livelihood on your community, and it would take a long time for them to close down. So invest in them, showcase the 3 out of 5 that are surviving COVID and make them stronger. And so all that Shop Happy does is try to create that platform to draw and influence footfall so that Beth can go out with her family and know what to do. And she can see it all in one place, that she can go and stop in the cafe and go to the event and buy her shops and click and collect and do everything in a safe way possible. We know in autumn that there could potentially be a second wave. If there isn't the digital resilience we needed in the high street, we needed prior to COVID. So now 1 in every £3 is being spent online. For God's sake, don't let that kill your high street. 1 in £5 it was prior to COVID. So people have developed an online habit. We want it to be a shop local habit and not an Amazon one. So I hope people in Taunton join shophappy.com. I hope to speak to Paul and everybody else to see how we can join these dots because, you know, I can just see, I went to the meeting yesterday, so much passion in Somerset and Taunton, and it's just that emotional connection will get your economy to thrive, but you just have to make it easy for people to do what they know they want to and they know they should do. So that's shophappy.com. Have a look.
Thank you, Jackie. Yeah, we've got. I mean, the council's convinced enough that we've been prepared to subsidise Shop Happy for a year. I would suggest that everyone takes as much advantage as they can at this moment in time. What I would like to just ask a quick 5 minutes before we move on, because I think we're okay time-wise. Any questions for Jackie from that?
Actually, before any questions, Marcus, I could just say some things I forget to say. So I get into the passionate bit of it and I lose track. But basically, it's free for any business in Taunton to join Shop Happy. Unlimited products and services, things you can book, things you can buy, get your artists on there, your makers, all these cultural people you're talking about. If you've got an event and you're thinking you might cancel it, for God's sake, don't let it go virtual. If you've got a real event, let it go virtual as well, because people won't be able to go to it if they're worried. So yeah, it's free, and it's just, we're really excited about working with the businesses and also makers and artists and community groups. It's very much a platform which is your local community online.
Thank you, Jackie. So no questions. Everyone's happy everyone's happy with Shop Happy. No questions for you. Okay, that's great. Okay, if I can just move on. There's been a couple of questions actually, and there was one, and I was going to bring Nick in just to answer it, and I think it was a redundant commercial units. Can I bring you in, Nick Bryant, on that one, please?
You can very quickly. I don't want to hog too much time here, but yeah, it's correct to say there was a question raised in the chat about some changes to planning policy around reuse of commercial premises for residential. Yeah, so the reference there is to an announcement I should say, that the government made earlier in the week, which is around changes to the permitted development rights, which will indeed allow for the conversion of certain retail units to housing and potentially their redevelopment as well. So that was only announced earlier in the week. It's coming in from early August. We'll have to wait and see the detail before we understand precisely how it works. Clearly, it has the potential to be a benefit to town centres. I think we just need to be really clear on the detail on that. And I think I'll just make one watchword on that, which is, of course, if you're converting businesses, retail units to residential, they are obviously potentially lost, and they won't be subject to our planning policy. So things like space standards to make sure that those units are of the same size that we might insist upon for new development. But we'll have to wait and watch this space and see the detail on that one.
Thank you, Nick. Now, the next item on the agenda is another open for discussion. It's the future shaping a high street. Now, actually, we probably ended up talking about quite a lot of that earlier on. But there were a couple of points made earlier, and yeah, there was someone put on the chat about tidying up the immediate areas, making sure things like, and one of the things I said, do we make the car parks? Yeah, and this is for you to answer really. Do you spend the money on tidying up the car parks? If there's potentially money there to be used, do we do that and tidying up the car parks so it looks clean and tidy on the first impressions? Or actually, people are not bothered about what the car parks look like, but would they rather make sure that money was spent actually on the physical side of the high street? I think I have to say, I mean, I don't live in Taunton. I've never lived in Taunton. Obviously, I go to Taunton a lot. I look at, if you live where I live, Taunton's a place you go shopping. And I think there are a couple of say could be a lot nicer than it is, but I don't, when you look at Taunton as outside, Taunton is still a very nice place. I mean, admittedly, if you look in, there's times when you stand in front of the Market House, or as I call it, the Back to the Future building, and you look up, and you if you actually do look up, which a lot of people don't, yes, there's a couple of buildings there you do wonder about, but generally Taunton is a nice place, and you can see I think it's got the basis of being a beautiful town centre, because it's not, it's still got its character and charm. And I think that's things we can work on. But yeah, one of the things I'd like to throw back to you and say, and really say to you was, if say we wanted to put a market on, different market every day, well, that was one of the things that came up. How would then traders react? Because obviously sometimes, a lot of people would say events and markets drive footfall, but then actually if you talk to some individual shopkeepers, if you're, I don't know, if I think we had the famous, we always used to have the famous problems of, you used to have a farmer's market and then there'd be a butcher's outside of butcher's, and the butcher used to get upset about the fact that, this market used to turn up and, take all his meat trade. And there was a famous one where, we had a fishmonger that lasted 6 weeks in Minehead, but I think when the farmer's market comes along and the fishmonger's there, he's got a queue longer than the farmer's market. So things like that. So I'd love to hear your views on that, and I think the team would love to hear your views on that. And of course, we touched on pedestrianisation, and again, we get different views on pedestrianisation. Some people think it's a good thing. There was something on the news the other day that the traders in, I think was it Burnham, were complaining that the pedestrianisation had killed their trade and the world was going to end. But you look at some of the comments from the residents and shoppers. East Street, everybody thinks it's a roaring success. So I'd like to throw that open to you. So, what can we, we've talked about, a lot of things are being talked about, which are probably more medium and long term. What would you say are your priorities? As potentially, if you've got £500,000, potentially a significant amount of money coming to Taunton. We've been talking to the Chamber, we're working with the Chamber, but what do you want? There must be somebody else who wants to.
Well, yeah, I mean, sorry, I mean, I really don't want to hog this. Yeah, what do we want? You've got, and it's been mentioned, I mean, we've hinted at all this, it's actually been mentioned tonight. You do actually need a unique selling proposition. We have lost our identity. We were a market town, we're not anymore. I'm repeating myself. But you need a sharp focus. Marcus, I mean, items like pedestrianisation, free parking, outdoor seating, clean towns, cycle lanes and so on are all very worthy things and should be pursued. But they in themselves will not attract people into the town centre. They won't do that. You need, sorry, someone chipping in, but you need to put arts and culture at the very heart of your mission here. That will transform Taunton. There are lots of case histories that I could quote that will do that. You make arts and culture the centre theme of Taunton's regeneration, and Taunton will become a honeypot. A honeypot because you've created a vibrant scene in the town. It'll bring business into the town, it'll bring people into the town, it'll persuade people to buy their houses here, it will give them a sense of place, it will really make Taunton into a destination. That is the prime focus you must have. For the immediate term, we've already discussed that around the room, and you need to get the place going with an arts officer, an arts officer better than an events officer, to really start chivvying up this town and making it an exciting place for people to visit. Not just local people, but people from outside the county. Why shouldn't they come to Taunton? The trouble is we have no competitive edge in the sense that Exeter does or Bristol does. We are sandwiched between those two big conurbations. We need to stand up for ourselves, speak for ourselves, and have a position, placemake ourselves, and give ourselves a clear identity. And I tell you now, make it arts and culture, that will happen, and the ripple effect, the honeypot, if you will, effect, will be to attract people to this town. I'm afraid we live in an age, yes, we do live in an age of Amazon. We do live in an age where retail in town centres are declining. We need to do something about it. Otherwise, town centres will die. So we can't really think too much about trying to regenerate retail. Markets I like, good markets. They attract visitors. But think arts and culture, you will regenerate this town. And that's in the immediate term. In the longer term, yes, we need to create Firepool. Someone mentioned Coal Orchard earlier. Well, back in 2010, 2014, the previous administration was talking about Coal Orchard becoming the cultural quarter of Taunton. Well, they messed it all up. It's not going to be a cultural quarter. It'll be essentially residential and on the river and very nice, but it won't have any real meaning. With Firepool, you can do something great you're going to have a cinema, you're going to have a multi-purpose venue there. All of these things are very good things. I look forward to the redevelopment of Firepool. Great. We've mentioned the collar factory. That is an important building that we can transform into something that will attract people to this Taunton, that will give Taunton an identity. Similarly with you've got to find a solution for the pumping station. Quite what we do with that, I don't know. But the collar factory for me is a big one and an important one. And it's all that kind of region.
Yeah, thank you.
That Arts Taunton is working on. Sorry, Marcus.
Yeah, no, thank you, Kit. I want to try and keep. Keep to any. Well, we've got a couple more speakers. I've had Lisa got a hand up, so I'm going to go to Lisa. Then I'm going to go to Colin. And apologies, Oliver, because Colin hasn't spoken yet. So I'm going to go to Colin first. And if anybody else wants to stick your hand up, do so now to come in later. But Lisa.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm particularly interested in hearing your views on what we might make of the river. And Kit, just mentioned it now, but I'm quite surprised that we're with this far into the conversation and we haven't brought our river tone up so far. So I'm quite interested in people's views around the use of the river as a leisure opportunity. So we've heard a lot about arts, and absolutely arts, events, culture. I'm completely taking all of those comments on board that I've heard this evening. But there is the potential that we could provide some boating, pleasure boating or water sports from the town centre, potentially around the coal orchard area. And I'm just wondering what people think of the river as a focal point, and whether you think we should make more of that as a feature to help Taunton to be a destination, somewhere to visit for a purpose. And I'm just interested in your views on the river in that context.
Thank you, Lisa. Can I move now to, I'm going to move to Colin, and Colin can start with the river, because obviously, I mean, we've taken great as an administration, we've talked about the garden town, we've talked about fire pool regeneration, we talked about that walk along the river into the town centre via Coal Orchard, etc. But yeah, I'll pass you over to Colin now.
Thank you. It's been really good to see so many participants here tonight, and the positivity that's in the room. You probably won't be surprised, for those of you who don't know, before the lockdown, we were running a campaign to have a business improvement district in Taunton to be able to invest in the town on things like events, which undoubtedly would have included many of the arts situations, markets, all sorts of activity. Unfortunately, because of the situation we had, the bid vote was suspended. So you won't be surprised to hear that that was rather irritating, through no fault of anyone's in particular. But at the same time, various people on that working group have been speaking about what we could do to challenge ourselves as a business community and a cultural community, to make sure that we don't lose the momentum that we had before that. So I was very pleased to hear that the council has put forward some funds, and we've been in discussions with the council about how we would get a group of people to represent all activities in Taunton, not just the high street businesses that were in the bid area. And they've been very positive discussions. And looking around the screen tonight, I think there's a number of people that we would welcome discussions with to try and involve as many people as possible, because the group concedes that they don't have all the best ideas. There are loads more people with loads of good ideas out there. We wanted to make this group as inclusive as possible. So I'm really thrilled that as many people have contributed tonight, because I think something can be done, and something can be done relatively quickly. So from that point of view, the Chamber of Commerce Executive is trying to move things forward, and we look forward to engaging with many more people. And one thing I would just like to share with you is my business, I didn't know where we would be once we got past the initial effects of COVID, and extremely worried for all my staff and whether or not I'd be able to bring them back to work. I've been very fortunate because we have an outside seating area in the high street, which has helped enormously, because a lot of people at the moment are feeling safe eating outside. But if you take aside that situation, the one thing that I know, and having spoken to people for the last 3 weeks face to face, there are a lot of people still coming from all parts of the country to Taunton and West Somerset. And I spoke to people today from Worcester, from Solihull, from the south coast of Devon, who come to Taunton because they like Taunton. We need to build on that, because they will come, build it, and they will come. If we give them more to come for, I'm sure that they will. They love the fact that they get such a friendly welcome in Taunton. They like the fact that it's relatively compact. So yes, we acknowledge that there are big threats from the likes of Bristol and Exeter, but those are cities, and we are a big town, but we've got a lot of stuff all in a very compact area. So I think, yes, the river should be part of that. The Coal Orchard area redevelopment should be part of that. but we do need to tidy up and make the most of whatever we've got in the other streets that are part of the centre of Taunton. So I look forward to speaking to more people over the next few weeks to try and get some action quickly, because this is the key. We can't afford to hang around. We've got to get moving on this. And I think whatever the title may be, events manager, arts manager, we can argue about the title, but it's got to encompass a bit of everything. So thank you all for contributions, and thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, Colin. And I think it should be also probably said that as well, that if there is someone like that, that their job is to try and leave in some more funds as well to help it grow and grow. I've got Eddie Gaines and I've got Oliver wishing to come back. So Eddie first, then Oliver. And I haven't got any more hands. So if anybody does want to say anything, please put your hand up now.
Thanks very much again, Marcus. I've heard the word market mentioned so many times, and we don't actually have a permanent market in Taunton. And I think, again, regeneration, I mean, you know, I grew up in London, and there was the Camden Town Market, and Kensington had a market where, you know, there were record stalls, there were jewellery, clothes, etc., etc. And I know in Wellington they've got a pop-up shop, for example, which you know is run by the Wellington Town Council. So, you know, letting organisations run the shop for whatever purposes, charitable or whatever. And there must be a lot of people who have got, you know, aren't very good at eBay or Amazon or whatever, and have got, you know, record collections. I mean, I've got film posters, for example, I've collected over many years, and I'd just love to maybe go into something like a temporary market and just for a month and sell off my, you know, some of my collection and whatever. I'm afraid my battery's going a bit low now, so I might have gone off. Sorry about that. But I mean, I'd be interested to know what's happening about the bus station, for example, which is now in SWAT hands.
Thank you, Eddie. I think at the moment the bus station, well, it's no, we're looking at what we're going to do with that in the long term. So with regard to the next speaker, we have Oliver. So Oliver, if you can, we're drawing to the close. I'd like to bring some other people in if I can. So Oliver, you can go next. If you can keep it reasonably brief, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken quite a lot, so I'm happy to let them go forwards. And if we've got time at the end, just make the couple of points that I have. But to go over one of them really quickly, that I've noticed that SW&T are actually looking for a media and communications assistant. I saw it up on LinkedIn today. So is that because there's a drive there to find this person for events? Is that what that role is for, or is it something else? I mean, that wasn't my main point, but that was just one thing that I thought I'd throw in. And then you're welcome to come back to me afterwards. It's not a rant like it was before necessarily, but I think there is a solution here that's staring us in the face, and it's not online based, and it's very much startup and local business orientated. And I think that maybe some time at another day and point might maybe be open to having a shop appy style pitch with people again like today.
Thank you, Oliver. As it happens, we now have nobody else's hands up.
Yeah, Kit would like to speak.
Oh, Kit, okay. You've got your hand up. And then I'll have Paul Smith.
I'm sorry.
So, Kit, keep it as...
It will be very brief. I just want to pick up on what Lisa Redston said, mentioning the River Tone, which has not been mentioned yet, and it should have been. That is a very, very important facility and a great opportunity for this town. And I'd link it with Taunton's Green Wedges as well, which connects us to the surrounding countryside, the Quantocks, the Blackdowns, the Somerset Levels and Exmoor. These are great assets that are related to Taunton. We are right at the heart of some of the most beautiful countryside in Great Britain, and we shouldn't forget that in terms of our positioning and our placemaking.
Thank you, Kit. And I'd agree that, you know, people talk about Bristol and Exeter. I would say Taunton is better located as a place. I have Paul Smith who would like to say something now. And I mean, Paul put on the group earlier, I'm excited for Taunton's future. We have a big opportunity to build on what we have. Like on a personal level, I shouldn't be sharing an opinion because I'm sharing, but I really...
Yeah, it was just to say, I think, you know, we going back to the ideas that are on about identity, I think it is taking stock of what we got. So if we kind of re-look at the monopoly board of Taunton and what goes around it, what are our key things that we've got? And take stock of that, to do an audit of what we've got and what are the quick wins. So tidying up areas, using the arts, the waterways is a brilliant thing because it's attractive to lots of people from different ages. We've got some, I'm really excited about Taunton's future. I'm delighted to have a role within the community with our magazine. I just think it's showcasing what we got, the heritage, the arts, the culture, the food, the waterways, the cricket, the cider, you know, whatever we got, independent shops. It's taking stock of that and then saying, well, what have we got? I mean, it's not a lot of money we got, but there are some quick wins. So I'm happy to have further conversations with people if they want to and use our platform to get more people involved. But I've really enjoyed tonight.
Thank you. Well, I think there's no one else's hand up. So if anybody does want to speak, now is the time to speak, or we're going to gradually bring it to a quick close. I just was going to bring in Lisa just to talk about a couple of things like the next steps, what we're going to do next, because obviously we've all been listening intently. There's been lots of discussions before tonight. People have been taking notes. I've been taking some quite rubbish notes, to be honest. Luckily, the meeting's being recorded, but I'll hand you over to Lisa now just to talk about a couple of next steps.
Thanks, Marcus. Marcus, do you want me to talk about YouTube? Should I give me a nod? Because I think you're going to cover it. Should I cover it?
Yeah, I think, well, actually, I will. Can I just mention? Right, no. Well, no, you mentioned that. Go on.
Okay, guys. So, one of the things, obviously, we've recorded this evening's session, and it's been an absolutely fantastic session. It's been really valuable. There have been some fantastic ideas coming through, and like Paul, I'm feeling really excited about the future of Taunton. So one of the things that we would like to do is to take this recording and make it available on YouTube for anybody that wasn't able to attend this webinar tonight that might want to listen into some of the things that you've been talking about. What I'm going to ask is that if there's anybody that would not like us to publish this in that kind of environment, to please let us know. You can send me a private chat message on here now, but if anybody if everyone is quiet, I'm going to assume that you are giving us permission to be able to share tonight's recording on a more public platform. So like I said, please in the chat let me know. If you're not happy about it, we won't publish it. It's not a problem. So that was just something that we would like to do. So I think other people definitely would benefit from listening to what you all had to say this evening. In terms of next steps, so we've held the webinars over this week. We have collected in emails from businesses and the community who we've asked us to email us freely with their ideas and their thoughts around our high streets. We're going to collate all of this information together, and this will feed into the development of a plan of how we can spend this £500,000 that we've been talking about that's been made available across the high streets. I do want to say and reiterate something Marcus said earlier on. There's £500,000 to be spent across the district on our high streets. That's great. We will do what we can and we'll work really closely, as Colin mentioned earlier on, as a partnership with you all and with the Taunton Chamber to develop that plan and get that out the door as quickly as possible. So the plan is, so the other point I just wanted to make there was that this £500,000 isn't the end, it's the beginning. And actually what we need to be doing when we're thinking about how we spend this money is thinking how we can make it produce more money or more funding or more events, and how we can make that grow. It doesn't have to be a finite amount of money. We can utilise it to lever in more for our town centres. So we're going to collect all the information together that we've gathered. We'll share that back out with everybody, so you can have a record of all the different types of comments that people and suggestions that people have come forward with. And we will get that plan pulled together, and we'll start to deliver some of this stuff as soon as we possibly can. The funding is available now. There's no process to go through. The funding is available now. We can start spending it now. We just need to make sure that we're spending it on the right things to move Taunton in the right direction. And we'll continue to work with you all on that, and we'll continue to work through a partnership group on that, which we would absolutely love businesses to be part of, because you're there and you're living this, and we want to know what you think. So that's where we're going to go from here. And then the next steps after that, you'll actually start seeing some of these things happening in our town centre, and hopefully making a difference to your businesses on a day-to-day basis. So that was all from me.
Thank you, Lisa. And I'd just like to thank everyone for taking the time to come along tonight. I'm looking at 2 full screens of people. There's not a third screen. But if those who haven't spoke, or you wish to get in touch with us, by all means, email us. And I think the email address is, or is it Opening the High Street? So somebody can correct me on that one. I think it's in the chat somewhere. But if you get in touch with us, if there's anything you would like to add that you didn't want to say tonight, or you think about as soon as we hit the close button on the meeting, then please do. I think, you know, there's been some obvious things that's come as the message about arts and culture has been got across very well. The other stuff that's been talked about, even the stuff, it's interesting, the stuff we talked about with A boards earlier on. I think the A boards are most councils, or most councils' bane of their lives, because you know, people don't like A boards, but businesses can't survive without them. And although many councils have in the past tried to find a solution, and in the end we end up with A boards. So there are little points like that as well. So I don't want to go on. I think there's been some good discussion. I'd like to thank everyone for coming along. And Craig just put opening high streets at Somerset West and Taunton.gov.uk. I'd like to thank everyone for coming along. Thank you for your input, and please just get in touch if there's anything you think about in the meantime. And we're going to close this meeting 1 minute early. So thank you very much. Good to see everyone. And let's keep in touch on this one. Thank you.
Thank you.